Hello, and thank you for joining me today. Well, this is the Monday, January 10th edition of our video devotionals. Thank you so much for joining us today. And we call this Marvelous Monday or Magnificent Monday. Either will apply. And we try to make Mondays a little bit more upbeat because it's usually for those who work Monday through Friday or even just Monday through Saturday or whatever. Usually the beginning of the work week is going to be a Monday. And, you've had your weekend, you've had Sunday, and you've been able to get some things accomplished or been able to, rest or whatever it is. And then you go back to work and you go back to school. So all that to say, Mondays, we try to be a little bit more upbeat. So we're glad you're watching with us. We appreciate you very much. 10 days into the new year, 10 days into this new month of January, and, time's clipping along. Well, our theme this year really is, as I read through the Bible, I'm going to give you something from the portion that I've read for that day. It happens to be, today is Genesis 32 through 35. And I give you just a few highlights, but we're actually going to go to Genesis 32:10 and give you something from there. But basically, within those chapters, it really begins that Jacob is going to have an encounter with the Lord. He's going to wrestle with the Lord, and Jacob says, "I'm not going to let you go till you bless me." And then, of course, Jacob's name gets changed from Jacob to Israel. He's in the process of getting things right with his brother. After that encounter with the Lord, he does get right with his brother Esau, and that's quite an exchange there between them, real gracious. And then that's done. And then there's going to be this terrible dilemma with Dinah, his daughter, and the neighboring people that he ends up where he pitches his tent. And then God says, I want you to go back to Bethel. He goes back to Bethel. And as he gets back there, one of the things that happens is Rachel, she bears him his last son, and that's Benjamin. But she dies in childbirth. And then at the very end of that chapter, we find out that Isaac, his father, and Esau's father passes, and they bury their father, and that's kind of where that ends in chapter 35. But if we go back to this encounter, or at least before the wrestling event, Jacob says something to the Lord. And here's what he says here in Genesis 32:10. He says, "I am not worthy of the least of all the mercies and of all the truth which thou hast shown unto thy servant. For with my staff I passed over this Jordan, and now I am become two bands." Of course, he's trying to divide things up and present a present to his brother Esau. He really thinks Esau may attack, and it's going to be a terrible thing, but he's trying to be gracious. But as he's in the process of doing that, and right before, of course, he wrestles with the Lord, he says this, "I'm not worthy of the least of all the mercies and of all the truth." And isn't that kind of what our life is really about? When he says I'm not worthy, that always leads to this, the attitude of appreciation and thankfulness is really what he's saying there. And none of us are worthy of all the things that God does, but he does those things. And he does those things not to leave us in a position to be all wallowing around and feeling so inadequate we can't do anything because we're so unworthy. No, God puts himself into our life, and two of the things he mentions there is all the mercies and all the truth. Let's talk about the mercies. You think about mercy, you think about God being gracious to you, especially when you're in positions where you need to grow, spiritually speaking, or even before you got saved, became a child of God. Think about how God was merciful to you, allowed you to live, brought you through some things, and all the things that would go with that, the mercies of God, the allowances of God, and how God is patient with us, and all that, the things he does because he's a merciful God. And then of all the truth, I'm so glad that God doesn't just kind of, as we use the term, he's kind of kind and looks at us in a pitiful manner. He provides truth. He gives us the truth. He tells us, here's what needs to be done in your life. Here's who I am. And that raises our character because we see the holiness and the righteousness of God. And we should be thankful for that. We're not worthy of it, of course. We're not worthy to be called a child of God. Imagine that. I love the verse. I say it all the time, but I guess it's almost become my life verse here. But, John 1:12, "But as many as received him, to them gave he power to become the sons of God, even to them that believe on his name." So I'm a child of God. And we should walk with that demeanor about us. We are in the family of God, and we are kings and priests with God. Now, we're not worthy of that. But we realize that, and when we realize the unworthiness of it, we also realize, hey, but God has placed these mercies and these truths into our life, and we should be thankful. No, we're not worthy of it. Of course we're not. But God has done that. We can be appreciative of that. So think about just the individual and specific things in your life besides being saved and the things that he does. But, God has done so much for us. And just think today, as you think about the mercies and the truth of God in your own life, and think about where Jacob could really, talk about a man who could really look at the mercies of God, but yet the truth of God too. And then as I close out on this, as we're about the 5 minute, 20-second mark, when you think about all the people that the land of Israel could be named after, it happens to be a man by the name of Jacob who gets his name changed. A cheater, a guy that you think, well, why him? But that's God for you there. And that's even merciful that even today, as we think about Israel as a nation, the namesake of that country that God called, that God said, I'm going to make of you a great nation, Abraham. And then, of course, there's Isaac, and then it gets to Jacob, and his name is changed. I just think that's a pretty awesome thing that of all the people, Jacob is kind of the namesake of the country, but of course his name was changed. But there's the mercies and there's the truth of God. Let us realize the unworthiness of our position, but also realize we're in a position where the children of God uses us and loves us and has elevated us and raised us. That's a pretty awesome thing. Well, we're going to leave it at that today. Hope you have a great day. We'll see you tomorrow on Thankful Tuesday. Have a great day.